Los Angeles, early spring. The air smells of damp concrete, fresh flowers, and hope. In a tiny antique gallery on the corner of Silver Lake Avenue and 24th Street, in the dim light between stained glass windows and vintage display cases, Rebecca Hale carefully places a porcelain sculpture on a pedestal. Her fingers tremble, not from fear, but from excitement. Today is a special day. Angelina Jolie, the star whose name never leaves the headlines, is expected to arrive to see this very sculpture. A rare piece, 18th-century porcelain, worn yet elegant, once owned by a French diplomat. The gallery is quiet, the silence broken only by the clicking of heels and the creaking of wooden floors. Rebecca has worked here for 8 years. Hale Antique is her life, her dream, her bank. She's 44 and has spent nearly everything she had to buy this space. She lives in a small apartment above the gallery, drinks cheap coffee, works weekends, all for the sake of art, of the collection, of her small but proud empire. The doorbell rings. A tall woman in glasses and a caramel-colored coat enters the gallery. Behind her, 2 men, one a bodyguard, the other an assistant. Rebecca recognizes her instantly, though Jolie gives nothing away. No makeup, no posture, but a gaze that is both focused and elusive. "Miss Hale," the assistant says. "We don't have much time." Of course," Rebecca nods, feeling her throat go dry. They walk deeper into the gallery. Angelina stops at the pedestal, tilting her head. A few seconds of silence. Rebecca watches her every move, how she squints slightly, how she slowly circles the sculpture, how she touches the glass dome with her fingers. And then she speaks. "It's alive. Almost breathing." "It's a rare piece," Rebecca manages to say. "Only 2 in the world. The other is in a private collection in Geneva." Angelina turns to her. Her voice is soft but firm. "I like it. Consider it almost decided. We'd like to acquire it for the Global Culture Foundation, for an exhibit on forgotten European masters." Rebecca barely hears the last sentence, her mind is ringing with the words, "almost decided." She nods, hides a smile, and tries to appear composed, but inside she's bursting with joy. This is it. This is the moment she's dreamed of. A deal with Angelina Jolie isn't just a sale, it's a step into a new league. It's reputation, new clients, a once-in-a-lifetime chance. After the actress leaves, the gallery feels flooded with light. Rebecca calls her accountant. "Get the paperwork ready." "Yes, it's serious." "Jolie. The real one. I think the deal will be finalized within a week." The next day, she turns down a potential buyer from Milan. He even offers more money, but Rebecca already considers the sculpture sold. She takes out a short-term bank loan to pay for advertising, hires a new employee, renovates the back room. Everything to prepare for the next level. A week passes. Then another. Nothing from Jolie. Her assistant stops responding to emails. Rebecca gets nervous, but still believes, she's probably filming, she's busy, we'll finalize everything soon. A month later, an official letter arrives from the Global Culture Foundation. "Thank you for the information about the sculpture. However, we are not ready to proceed with the acquisition at this time. We may revisit the matter in the future. Respectfully. Foundation Coordinator." Rebecca reads the letter 5 times. At first, she doesn't understand. Then it sinks in. They've changed their minds. No explanation. No call. Just rejection. And everything she banked on begins to fall apart. The loan, still hanging. The new employee, needs a salary. The ad campaign, money wasted. The gallery, already on the edge, begins to crack. Another week passes, she receives a notice from the bank, her loan payment is overdue. Then a letter from her landlord's lawyer, 2 months' rent unpaid. Her inventory partner walks out, too unstable. In the evening, the gallery is dark. Dim streetlight filters through the stained glass. The sculpture still stands on its pedestal. Just as elegant. Just as unwanted. Rebecca sits on the floor, her back against the wall. Angelina's words flash through her mind, consider it almost decided. Almost, she whispers. But almost was enough to ruin everything. She slowly gets up, grabs her tablet, and begins typing. A lawsuit. Addressed to Angelina Jolie. For the amount of $100,000. Grounds, business negligence, reputational and material damages. End of part. The next morning, Rebecca walks through downtown toward the courthouse. Cameras catch her face by chance. No one knows who she is. Not yet. But she stops on the steps and says to a reporter with a microphone. She ruined my life. I'm suing. And the camera freezes. It all started with a short segment on the evening news. A local TV channel aired footage of Rebecca Hale, in a gray coat and with a nervous expression, walking up the steps of the Los Angeles County Courthouse. A reporter with a microphone, not expecting anything dramatic, simply asked a routine question. Why are you suing Angelina Jolie? Because she ruined my life, Rebecca replied calmly. The reporter paused, then asked again. What exactly are you accusing her of? Of business negligence. And of giving her word, then leaving me in debt. By the next morning, the video of the interview had a few thousand views on YouTube. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds. 2 days later, CNN aired a short piece, Angelina Jolie sued over sculpture purchase refusal. Other media headlines were even louder. Hollywood scandal, Jolie in $100,000 court battle. Small gallery takes on big star. She promised, then didn't buy, Angelina at the center of a new legal drama. Rebecca woke up in the apartment above her gallery to the sound of her phone ringing non-stop. Journalists, lawyers, old acquaintances she hadn't heard from in years. One voice on the line said. I'm Mary Johnson, a journalist with the New York Post. We'd like to interview you. Preferably with the sculpture in the background. It'll be powerful. Rebecca felt the world speeding up around her. She hadn't expected this. She wanted justice. She wanted Jolie to understand that you can't play with people's lives. But now, she was in the center of a storm. Everything was spinning too fast. That same evening, she went on a local radio show to tell the full story, how Jolie had come, made a promise, and how it had all collapsed. She knew her word wasn't just words. It's like a signature. When a star says, consider it done, you build your reality around that. I invested money, turned down other clients. And then, silence. Emptiness. Those words spread across social media. Dozens of TikTok videos appeared with the hashtag Justice for Rebecca. People began to debate, some supported Rebecca, calling her a symbol of small business crushed by celebrity power. Others wrote, she just wants attention, or, her fault, she didn't wait for a contract. 3 days after the media frenzy, Rebecca received a notice from Angelina Jolie's legal team. The official response, the allegations were considered groundless, and they were prepared to defend their reputation in court. And suddenly, it all became real. Courtroom. First hearing. Rebecca arrived alone. No PR team, no entourage, just her lawyer, a short woman named Margaret, with a cold gaze and neatly tied-back hair. Jolie wasn't there, only her representatives, 3 lawyers from a prestigious firm. Dry expressions, leather briefcases, not a trace of emotion. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a sharp look, presided with the calm precision of slicing bread. Margaret stated the essence of the case: business negligence, a verbal commitment, financial damage, and emotional distress caused by public backlash. Jolie's lawyers immediately filed a motion to dismiss. Verbal agreements hold no legal weight, especially in the art world, where deals are always formalized in writing. My client signed no documents, paid no deposit, and submitted no requests, one of the lawyers said. She merely expressed interest, which does not constitute an obligation. Margaret, without blinking, responded. My client turned away other buyers based on Ms. Jolie's confident statement, made in the presence of witnesses. The consequences were devastating. This wasn't just interest. It was intent, backed by authority. The judge listened silently, then made a note. Motion denied. The court will proceed with the case. Rebecca exhaled. Meanwhile, as for Jolie. Paparazzi caught her outside Paramount Studios, where she was busy with a new directing project. She said nothing, but her assistant dropped a comment in the crowd. This is strange. Angelina never intended to buy anything. She just admired the piece. People are making things up. But that phrase triggered another media wave. Admired but didn't buy, the tabloids ran wild again, and the internet exploded. Rebecca's lawyer made a clever move, calling as a witness Jolie's former assistant, whom she had fired 6 months ago. The man appeared in court and testified under oath. Yes, I was present during the conversation. Ms. Jolie clearly indicated that the piece would be purchased. We even discussed transport and temporary storage before it would be transferred to a foundation. Why the deal fell through, I don't know. Jolie's lawyers challenged the credibility of the witness, suggesting he was just a disgruntled ex-employee. But the damage was done. At the end of the hearing, the judge postponed the case for 2 weeks. But in the courthouse corridors, things were already boiling. A woman in her 50s approached Rebecca, shook her hand, and said, "You're brave. Someone had to do it. These people think they can get away with anything." Rebecca nodded, but inside, she felt hollow. She didn't feel brave. She felt tired. And that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, she asked herself for the first time. Had she gone too far? The envelope had no stamp. No return address. It simply lay in the mailbox, although Rebecca hadn't heard a thing, no footsteps, no knock. The sheet inside was smooth, white, with printed text in a uniform font, as if cut from a legal document. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Stop. Before it's too late. Rebecca held it in her hands for a long time, watching how the shadows of the letters spread in the morning light. There was something in the message that wasn't so much threatening as strangely calm. As if the person who wrote it wasn't angry, they just knew they held all the power. She took a photo of the letter and sent it to her lawyer. A couple of hours later, Margaret called back. Don't talk to the press about this. Not yet. It could be fake, intimidation, or just an attempt to shake you. These things are mind games. And what if it's not a game? Rebecca asked. What if someone really wants me gone? Then, Margaret said hoarsely, you're definitely on the right path. Meanwhile, the media wasn't staying silent. The third week of the trial exploded like gasoline, outlet after outlet began digging into the past. One blogger posted a video review of Rebecca's sculpture filmed before the scandal, calling the work strikingly cinematic. Another picked it up, did Jolie really admire it that much? Then why didn't she buy it? Theories started spreading. Some claimed Jolie pulled out of the deal because the sculpture depicted something too personal. Others argued, that's exactly why she wanted it. Rumors crept forward, and everyone wanted to know, what was the sculpture about? Rebecca knew that question would surface sooner or later. And she was afraid. Not because there was anything immoral in the sculpture, quite the opposite. It was too honest. It showed a female figure in profile, with broken arms and a gaze that seemed to say, I survived. She had worked on it for 6 months. During the winter her first studio shut down, her mother passed away, and everything in her life became fragile. The sculpture was a self-portrait of pain, strength, and solitude. And when Jolie walked into the gallery that day, looked at it and said, "This is my story." Rebecca, for the first time in a long time, felt that her art had touched someone. That's why Jolie's promise to buy it meant so much. It was a sign. A belief in herself. So when it all collapsed, it wasn't just a cancelled deal. It was a slap in the face. Then came the key moment of the trial, the witness testimonies. The first to be called was Liam, the assistant Jolie had fired. He repeated his earlier statement, adding, "She asked me to find out about shipping costs and temporary storage options. I even contacted logistics companies. It wasn't a fleeting interest." Jolie's lawyers again tried to discredit him. "You're bitter about being fired, aren't you?" "I'm not bitter. I'm disappointed that someone I respected became afraid of their own sincerity." The judge said nothing, but her gaze was sharp. Then came the art consultant Jolie often worked with. He gave testimony that seemed like it might destroy everything. "I saw the sculpture. Angelina showed me a photo, but said she changed her mind. That the piece was too exposing, too personal for a public collection. So she didn't promise to buy it," the defense clarified. "No. She just talked about it. Emotionally. But in our world, everything is in writing. Words aren't enough." Margaret remained calm. When it was her turn to ask a question, she said, "How many of your clients' purchases began emotionally and weren't documented right away?" "Almost all." The man shrugged. "She always speaks first, then acts. So Ms. Jolie's word in these matters carries weight?" He paused. Then said, "Sometimes more than a signature." After the hearing, Rebecca returned to the gallery and noticed the door was slightly ajar. She clearly remembered locking it. Inside, everything was in place, but on the table where her sketchbook had been, there was now a second envelope. Inside, only one phrase. "Stop. Or the next gallery won't be yours." Rebecca froze. She called Margaret. The lawyer said calmly, "Call the police. Immediately. And make copies of all your papers. Keep the flash drive separate. We're not dealing with pranksters, someone's starting to act for real." The next day, the story took a new turn. In court appeared a man Rebecca barely knew, a New York art dealer, Jonathan Crane, who suddenly declared, "I was the buyer she turned down. I was genuinely offered that sculpture. But when I tried to make a deposit, I was told it was already promised to Angelina Jolie." He submitted copies of letters proving that he had wanted to buy the sculpture, and that he was rejected based on a verbal commitment to the actress. Margaret, barely holding back her emotions, said, "So if there had been no promise from Ms. Jolie, my client would have been paid?" "Without a doubt," Jonathan replied. "The sculpture is a masterpiece. I regret not insisting back then." Those words became a turning point. But that same evening, as Rebecca walked home, she felt someone was following her. Quick steps. Pauses. Then steps again. She turned into an alley, pretending to search for her keys, and looked back. No one. And yet, when she reached her apartment door, there was a third envelope. This time inside was a photo. Taken from the street, through the gallery window. She stood by the table, unaware she was being photographed. On the back, nothing. Only a small red cross. The next morning, after a nearly sleepless night, Rebecca's first move was to check the mailbox. Empty. No notes, no photos, no threats. The silence was more terrifying than action. She called Margaret to inform her that there was no new message, but the lawyer interrupted. "We have a meeting. Urgent." "With who?" Angelina's representatives. They're requesting negotiations before the next court hearing. What do they want? I think, for you to stay quiet. The meeting wasn't held in court or at an office. It took place in a conference room at the Belmont Hotel, private entrance, security at the doors. It all looked like a corporate deal. The room smelled of coffee and leather folders. On one side of the long table sat two attorneys from Jolie's team and a man in his 40s in a flawless gray suit. He introduced himself as a mediator, though it was clear to everyone, he was there to settle things before trial. Miss Harper, the mediator began, we have thoroughly reviewed the materials. And we believe this matter can be resolved without further public proceedings. Rebecca stayed silent. Margaret spoke. So this is your position? An offer to avoid trial? What are the terms? The man opened a folder and pulled out a document. Confidentiality. Withdrawal of the lawsuit. In return, compensation in the amount of $100,000. By transfer. Today. Rebecca didn't immediately process it, the exact amount she was asking for in court. No more, no less. As if they were acknowledging her claim, but, without admitting it. That's it? She asked. That's it, confirmed the mediator. But with full confidentiality. You are not to mention Ms. Jolie's name. Under any circumstances. Not in interviews. Not in future projects. Not in podcasts, nor books. Never. Margaret exhaled sharply. A classic hush deal. Convenient. Convenient, the mediator agreed. And clean. And if we refuse? Rebecca asked. Then it continues. Court. Pressure. Fatigue. And there's no guarantee you'll win. Jolie can afford not to lose. This isn't a threat. It's reality. After the meeting, Rebecca didn't speak for a long time. They walked along the boulevard, past cafes, past stores. Past normal life, which now felt distant. You have to understand, Margaret said, this isn't defeat. It's a choice. Is it? Rebecca stopped. This is what I fought for. $100,000. But not for the money, for the truth. And now they're offering me money, and silence. Margaret nodded. They want to erase your story. As if it never happened. As if you made it up. Exactly. Rebecca's voice turned hollow. But I didn't make it up. That evening, Rebecca received a call. The number was hidden. A woman's voice, soft, almost a whisper. Miss Harper. I can't talk long. But I know who's threatening you. It's not the lawyers. It's not Jolie. It's someone from her inner circle, trying to cover their tracks. He was there when she discussed the sculpture. He forged part of the correspondence. If you keep going, he'll go further. I can't give you a name. But if you dig deeper, you'll find him. Why are you telling me this? Because I once stayed silent too. And then I lost everything. Who are you? It doesn't matter. The call ended. Margaret insisted Rebecca arrive at the next hearing with security. 2 private specialists escorted her from the car to the courtroom. It wasn't for show, it was necessary. Then something unexpected happened in court. The judge admitted new evidence, a recording submitted by an anonymous source. Voices could be heard. One of them, a male, nervous. If she talks, everything collapses. She needs to back off. Offer her money. Whatever it takes. Are you sure? She might go to the police. And if she talks, it'll fall back on Angelina too. Do we want that? The judge listened stone-faced. Jolie's team claimed they couldn't comment on an unauthenticated recording obtained by unknown means. The judge postponed the hearing for 3 days, to verify the recording. After court, on her way home, Rebecca noticed her door was unlocked. Nothing was ransacked. But something was missing, a flash drive containing a copy of the correspondence between her and the gallery confirming a verbal agreement on the sale. And on her desk was a new envelope. The last one. Inside, just one sheet. On it, a photo of herself. Taken in court, at the moment she stood up. Someone had clearly been in the room, unnoticed. On the back, written in pencil. You think you're in control. But we control you. Rebecca had not slept for almost a full day. She sat on the floor of her apartment, holding a sheet of paper with a threatening message. The envelope was gone, she had burned it in a metal bowl on the balcony. The threat was clear, we control you. But who were we? The apartment seemed untouched, but the flash drive containing the archive of correspondence was missing. Someone knew what to look for. That meant a stranger had been there. They entered, knew exactly what to take, and left unnoticed. This wasn't just intimidation, it was a systematic destruction of her evidence. The next day, at Margaret's request, the police came with a technical team. They inspected the locks, checked the camera at the entrance. Nothing. The footage had been deleted. Not a single frame. But in the evening, when Rebecca opened her laptop, she was met with a surprise, an anonymous email. No text, just an attached video file. She opened it, trembling as her hand pressed the spacebar. On the screen was footage from the security camera. It showed a person in a baseball cap and mask entering her apartment through the spare fire exit. But at the moment of entry, the face was flashed by a light. Skillfully done. Like a professional. 2 minutes later, the person exits, but for a second, the camera captures their hand, and on the wrist, there is a distinctive bracelet. Leather, with a metal insert. Rebecca sent the recording to Margaret, and they decided, this was a turning point. There was evidence. And it pointed to someone acting not on Angelina Jolie's initiative, but against her. We need to figure out who was near Jolie when she looked at the sculpture, Rebecca suggested. Who could have heard the conversation, been involved in it, but stayed in the shadows? Margaret recalled. There's one person. He appeared in all the documents, but he wasn't a lawyer or a PR manager. A technical consultant. John Hutchins. Former gallery curator, now an independent art expert. He was the one who presented Jolie with the sculpture when she saw it. Was he a middleman? Yes. But his name disappeared from the latest protocols. As if they erased him. The next day, Rebecca and Margaret went to the gallery where it all began. The administrator was chatty when Margaret showed her lawyer's ID. John Hutchins? He quit a year ago. After the scandal involving the sale of a work to another collector. We almost got sued. He disappeared, they said he went to France. And who did he work with most often? Big names. Including Angelina. She came to us with him several times. He was like a bridge between the artists and the stars. Did he speak to Rebecca? Of course. I even remember him praising her work, saying, "This will be interesting to Mr. Van Dorn." That's what he called one of his clients. Who is that? A rich guy. Bought art as an investment. But we never knew his name. Later in the evening, Margaret received an unexpected call. The police confirmed the authenticity of the audio recording provided at the previous hearing. It would be accepted as evidence. This changed everything. Now the court couldn't simply dismiss the case. And Rebecca couldn't just get $100,000 for her silence. It was heading toward an open confrontation. The next day, Rebecca received a new email. Sender, J.H. Subject, "You're wrong. I'm not your enemy." The text was strange. You don't understand the full picture. I did what I was told. Jolie is not to blame. She didn't know about your version of the sculpture. All of this was done by someone else. He wanted to use the idea in his own project. I just handled the paperwork. But now they've erased me too. I've lost everything. If you want to know the truth, come to Warehouse 19 on Pierce Street. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. Alone. No lawyer. Otherwise, you'll only hear silence. Rebecca showed the letter to Margaret. She was furious. This is a trap. You're not going there alone. I wasn't planning to. At 9 p.m., hiding in an old Jeep around the corner of Pierce Street, Rebecca waited for a signal from the private security guard who went to the warehouse first. 7 minutes later, he returned and nodded. Empty. Just him. No cameras. It's clean. Rebecca entered. The warehouse was lit by a single lamp. John Hutchins was sitting on a folding chair, a bag beside him. You came, he said. Thanks for not bringing the cops. They're nearby. If you're lying, you'll disappear faster than you can blink. He laughed. Sadly. I'm not your enemy. I just ended up on the wrong side. You think you're fighting Angelina? She doesn't even know who you are. I showed her another sculpture, a foreign render. I was paid to remove your signature. To change the documents. Who? He pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of contracts, payments, and a name. Richard Van Dorn. Millionaire. Investor. Collector. He stole the idea. Asked me to present it as the original work of some obscure sculptor from the Czech Republic. Then he offered it to Jolie, knowing she'd be impressed. Why? He wanted to create a series. Sell the concept to design platforms for the future. Turn this sculpture into something bigger, a line of furniture, installations, NFTs, even architectural elements. You had a brilliant idea, and he wanted to monetize it. And Jolie? She was just a pawn. She thought she was buying the original work. But he knew whose it was. He wanted to erase your name from the picture. Rebecca slowly sat down on a box. Everything clicked. All the pieces. The puzzle was complete. Why are you telling me this? Because he abandoned me. He said I was too visible. I became inconvenient. And now you're my chance to bring back justice. He handed her a flash drive. Everything's here. Contracts. Correspondences. Audio of him saying Rebecca's just a name on a draft. This is your weapon. Use it. Rebecca took the flash drive. Her heart was pounding. You understand that after this, you'll disappear? I already have. I have nothing left. But if you win, I'll be human again. The next morning, Rebecca went to court. And she brought the flash drive. Margaret listened to the audio, went through the documents. Then she said what Rebecca had been waiting to hear all this time. We don't just have a chance. We have a victory. On the day of the final court session, the atmosphere in the courtroom was more tense than ever. Rebecca sat in her chair, but her gaze was focused. She knew that the fate of her case depended on every word, every second. And if she made a mistake now, all the work, all the struggle would have been in vain. Margaret, sitting beside her, looked determined. She knew they had a chance, but also understood that this was a risky move. Everything depended on the last step, presenting the evidence in court. Angelina Jolie, as always, maintained her impenetrable appearance. She sat in the defendant's seat, her face remained serene, but Rebecca could see her fingers nervously gripping the handle of her handbag. Jolie's fate was hanging by a thread, and she knew it. When the judge stood up, everyone fell silent. The courtroom was enveloped in silence, only the sound of water trickling from the fountain outside disturbed the peace. We have reached the final stage of this case, the judge said, his words sounding like a verdict. "Defendant, your defense, what do you say in response to the final accusations?" Angelina sighed, but her voice was confident. "I am not guilty. All my actions were honest, aimed at purchasing a piece of work from a talented artist. I never intended to deceive anyone, including the plaintiff. My reputation is more important than anything, and I am ready for whatever decision the court makes." Rebecca watched her calmness. The same words she said before. It all feels like a lie. All she wants is to avoid responsibility. Margaret, sitting beside her, handed Rebecca a flash drive. This was their moment. Rebecca slowly stood up, her footsteps echoing through the room. She walked confidently toward the podium, though she was shaking inside. "Your Honor," she began, "I would like to present evidence that could completely change the course of this case. Documents, audio recordings, and correspondence that show this case has nothing to do with authorship. We are talking about the theft of an idea, manipulation, and most importantly, the interference of third parties." She inserted the flash drive, and the recordings appeared on the screen. Audio of John Hutchins, a technical consultant for the gallery, discussing with Van Dorn how they planned to alter documents to present the sculpture as the work of another artist. In the correspondence, the details of the deal with Jolie were discussed, showing how she was purchasing the unique piece, unaware that the idea had been stolen. There was no room for doubt in this evidence. The courtroom fell silent. Jolie didn't move, but her face turned pale. "This is evidence that, at the very least, Hutchins and Van Dorn used her name to manipulate the purchase," Rebecca continued. "They not only deceived me, but also her. I do not blame Angelina. She was just part of a scheme orchestrated by someone who manipulated both of us." Angelina lifted her gaze, and her face was hard to read. The judge remained silent, reviewing the documents. Then, he looked up at Rebecca. "This is a serious accusation, plaintiff. You claim that the defendant may have been misled. This changes the case significantly. Do you have evidence that she was unaware?" Rebecca paused. She knew that her task now was not only to accuse Jolie but to put her in a position where she could admit her ignorance. This was the key moment. "Yes, we have evidence," she said. "I am sure that Jolie did not intend to deceive me. However, her involvement in this case should not go without consequences. We must prove that the sculpture was stolen and that the copyright belongs to me. But this process is not about revenge. It's about the truth." The judge nodded and looked at Jolie's defense attorney, who also appeared concerned. "Defendant, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Angelina stood, but her eyes were now wide open, without the usual confidence. She took a step forward, and her voice sounded weaker than usual. "I didn't know what was happening. I believed the work was authentic, and I truly didn't want to be part of this situation. I came here not to destroy anyone's life. But now I understand that this situation is not just a mistake. It's much more. I may have lost my reputation, but I am ready to accept the consequences if it helps restore justice." She fell silent, and all eyes were fixed on her face. The judge looked at her, then at Rebecca and Margaret. "I think we've reached the final stage. This is not an easy case, but it is one that demands justice for all parties. We acknowledge that the defendant cannot be excluded from the process, as she acted in good faith. However, all circumstances suggest that she needs help in restoring rights." The judge raised his gavel, and silence filled the courtroom. "The plaintiff is entitled to compensation. The defendant will be required to pay the sum of $100,000 within 30 days. However, considering her lack of knowledge about the manipulations, the court's decision will also include a recommendation to end further legal proceedings in this case. The defendant will be free from further accusations." When Rebecca left the courtroom, her heart was heavy, but also freed. She didn't get everything she wanted. But she got the truth. And that was more important. Margaret met her at the exit, and they embraced. "You won, Rebecca." "We won." Rebecca nodded. But her gaze was distant, as if she were searching for another lost piece of the puzzle. "We won. But this is just the beginning. Now we need to help those who were involved."